Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's KATORS88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.
Guys, we have really exciting news. This is something that's actually happening. Our research library is live today.
Yeah, I think it's sweet.
We are excited to announce that we have fully integrated our cited sources into a PinkpillRx free access library interface, and it is now live, available for free to everyone. The library currently contains 800 plus cited sources that you can browse and search by source, topic, podcast episode. We're still actively integrating in additional sources, tags, labels, and organizational features, so you'll continue to see the library improve over the coming weeks. On top of that, coming August 17th is our premium research library. In addition to everything included in the free library, almost every source in the premium database includes expandable article summaries, major claims made by the publication, key statistics referenced, research notes and context, full keyword search capability across the database. The goal is to make finding, understanding, and citing our research dramatically faster. Whether you're just fact-checking us or doing your own reading or looking for the evidence behind the topics we discuss. If you're a podcast listener, we'll be sharing an exclusive promo code during the episode airing August 17th, which is the same day the Premium Research Library launches. So whether you use the library that's free or you decide to upgrade, we just hope it becomes a valuable resource for anyone who wants to explore the evidence for themselves. You can find a link to the library in the show notes.
I also like it because I see guys in your comments that are like, oh, that's wrong, or what's your evidence, or what's your sources? You can just literally send them a single link.
It's going to be so much easier than searching through the hot mess Google Doc that we've been having going on for 2 years now.
Yeah. There's an exhaustive amount of research
It is
compiled here.
2 years worth of research is what it is. And what I love about the premium library is that you get the summaries and the statistics and the claims without even opening the link if you don't want to open the link and like scrape the article yourself.
Right. So like the Cliff Notes have been done for you.
Yes, it's Cliff Notes. Exactly.
Yeah. I got to tell you, from the person who lives with her, she's been working, I don't know how many hours. You've probably put in full-time job, just the library.
Yeah, just working on the library.
Yeah. On top of all your other usual obligations and responsibilities.
But it's going to pay off, and I think you guys are going to like it. I'm sure there's going to be some bugs that need to be worked out. You can always email us at pinkpillrx@gmail.com if there's problems. There's also a report bad link, or if you think something's misplaced or something, you can click the hyperlink that's under each article so you can let us know, and we would appreciate you letting us know.
Please, yes, we can fix it.
In addition to that exciting news, I have more exciting news. We're going to be releasing 4 episodes in the month of August, including this one. We're going to do kind of like mini episodes in between our main episodes. So we're going to have our normal length episode followed by next Monday, a mini episode, which will just cover one topic or possibly a few tidbits, kind of like the tidbit section I've been doing. So be on the lookout for that. We're testing that out kind of like as a pilot program in the month of August to see how it goes. Okay, so here's my opening question for you, Jay. Do you remember the last episode where I asked you, would you follow a religion where you worship a female goddess and her daughter and read a book written by 40 different women that dictates men's role in society, where men aren't allowed to be leaders, etc.?
Yes, I recall.
And then your answer was?
No.
I should have followed up with that or pointed out how much faith it would take a woman to be a Christian. Because if you flip the script on that, they're following a religion where you worship a male god and his son. You read a book written by 40 different men that dictates women's role in society.
I mean, if I'm putting myself in those shoes and the roles are reversed, helps me like empathize more. And to me, that seems like women have to have a much larger degree of faith in order to practice in that religion, because you're trusting this deity and religious institution who doesn't represent you because it's male dominated, who has set all the rules for your gender.
And it was all translated by men too.
Yeah, because then you have to have trust issues with the text itself. I mean, you've talked to me about that before. I would have trust issues with the text. Give me a second to sit with that. There's a feeling I have, and I want to find words for it. I think that faith, by like definition, involves a mismatch between what you perceive with your senses and what you believe to be reality. Otherwise, you just, it's not faith, it's observation. When it comes to women, specifically in Christianity, there's a larger degree of faith that's required because you're having to believe that this church at large, or at least God within it, in Jesus' son, you have to believe that they have your best interest in mind, when the things in reality look like that's maybe not the case. So I think a greater degree of faith is women definitely have a higher degree of faith in Christianity, because you're choosing to remain in something where it has traditionally suppressed you. So you have to have faith to for your belief to overcome your observations.
Do you know what I think is funny?
What?
Mary Magdalene, right, was the first one that saw Jesus when he rose.
I think so.
And was told to go tell the others.
Yeah.
To announce that he had risen, right? Uh-huh. Historically, and a lot of conservative churches would freak out to have a woman preaching on Easter Sunday when she was the OG preacher of Easter Sunday.
Right. That says tradition.
Tradition.
Women should do the Easter homily. You know what?
They totally should.
I watched a good video from N.T. Wright, and I told you briefly about it. It was on TikTok. And they were asking him about when Paul says that women should keep silent in the church, right? And N.T. Wright had a beautiful answer, and he pointed to two women in the New Testament specifically. One was Phoebe. A lot of people are probably like, who's Phoebe? I've never heard of Phoebe in the Bible. The second was Mary Magdalene, and how Jesus entrusting her with that message was putting her in like more of a teaching, speaking position. So it's weird. It's weird that for centuries, women have been suppressed. Their voices have been suppressed in the church when Jesus is very obviously giving her a teaching role. Also, Mary and Martha, another Mary. There's a classic story of when like Martha's like they're hosting Jesus in his gang. And you have Martha who's doing all this hospitality work, which is, very common to be done in the culture. And she's doing a great job taking care. And then she's like, Mary, you need to help me. And talks to Jesus about it. It kind of seems like she's tattling on Mary. And Jesus says that, you have many concerns you're working on, but Mary's chosen what is best. What Mary was doing was sitting on the floor with the disciples listening to Jesus, which put her in the role of a student. And you didn't sit at the feet of a rabbi. Like, women didn't do that. But he welcomed her as an equal with the male disciples to listen to him teach. And I think there might have been an assumption, I can't remember, so don't quote me on this, with an assumption that she would be re-teaching what he has taught. And therefore, she is also in a like preemptive position of teaching or speaking. Mm-hmm. Oh, can I say something about Phoebe?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul wrote the letter to the Romans, which is like a, I don't know, that's like a lot of people's main dish of the New Testament's Romans. It should be one of the Gospels, but anyway. Like typically, if somebody was sent with a letter in the Roman world, Mediterranean world for century time, if somebody was sent with a letter to be delivered, I think it might be specifically to a group of people, but not individual, but I'm not sure.
they would traditionally read that letter aloud. So Phoebe would have been the first person to ever share the information from the book of Romans, ever. Also, in that time period, where the person who delivered the letter and read it aloud was also expected to have understood it to the degree that they could answer questions from the people they read it to. So Phoebe read out loud the epistle to the Romans. First person to ever read it was Phoebe. First person to ever speak it was Phoebe. And then Phoebe is the first person to ever answer questions about it and teach about it. So there needs to be some reconciliation there with the other New Testament verses that the church has used to suppress women for hundreds of years. I was fascinated by that this week.
This was actually from the Holy Post Media on TikTok. The greatest benefactors of complementarianism is mediocre men. Because if you're a mediocre man as a speaker, teacher, leader, you're more likely to find a position if half the population is barred from that position.
Dang.
But the moment you allow women into the mix, mediocre men lose. Gifted men, mature men, have nothing to fear from women in leadership.
You got this, like the others so far, quite the banger. I have to say. That's amazingly true.
Do you know, though, that modern complementarianism in general, is a more modern thing?
Oh, say more about that.
Okay. It arose in the late 1980s.
Oh, that's really... Oh,
it actually...
Really? Okay, got it. In America, that's the time it came up?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
and
okay.
Guess what?
What?
It was a response to the rise of evangelical feminism and egalitarianism. So feminism was going on, and this push for egalitarian equalness, right, was going on. They said, whoa, we got to do something about this.
And so that's your theological backing for it?
We have to do something about this. So it's actually traced to a small group of scholars and pastors who drafted the Danvers Statement in 1987.
I think I've heard of that once or twice.
And then they founded the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood.
It just sounds awful.
Which coined the term complementarian. It was framed as a middle way between traditional patriarchy, often implying male superiority, which was more of like the biblical trajectory of things up to that point, that just men were superior.
So is that like the evangelical default before?
Yes.
This time?
Yes.
And then you have egalitarian rise to combat that?
You have egalitarianism rising, specifically in evangelical feminist circles. So they said, we have to do something about this. So they decided, listen, men and women, yes, they are equal in value and dignity before God, because both are technically made in God's image. But they are created with different complementary roles, especially when it comes to marriage and family. Men are the head or the leader. Women are supportive and nurturing. And in the church, you cannot be a pastor or an elder. That is just for men. And this is framed as that middle way between the traditional patriarchy and egalitarianism.
Interesting. Huh.
Because in the 1970s and 1980s, many evangelical women and men began arguing that Scripture supports full equality in roles for men and women in church and the home. And they called themselves biblical feminists. There was groups that were made. Evangelical Women's Caucus was one of them. And then the conservatives saw this as a departure from historic Christian teachings on gender and authority and felt the need for a clear theological statement against egalitarianism.
Wow.
So then the Danvers Statement came out in 1987. They affirmed the equal personhood and worth. They asserted that God had ordained roles, and they explicitly opposed feminist egalitarianism. Not until the 1980s was that even a term or an idea. Because before then, it was just men were superior. And because of the feminist movement, they had to react and do something.
I was made aware of those two terms at the same time. Once upon a time, theologically, complementarian and egalitarian.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea that egalitarian was something that came up independently. And complementarian was just its response to it.
Yeah, it's a response.
It's not even an original thing. It's a response.
Right.
That's fascinating to me, that it wasn't discovered of its own value by its own value. It was manufactured in response to another group that had discovered something of value
and had started fighting for it in a biblical way.
Yeah.
Oh, that is really interesting.
It's basically patriarchy repackaged, just softer version of patriarchal norms is what it is. It's we got to shave off some of the edges here to make it more appealing because culture is going in this direction.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things hidden in the New Testament text if certain cultural things are not understood. For example, there's something that keeps coming up in my graduate work that's a limited goods society. It's the notion of limited good, which means, like in our society, you think, oh, you want to go out and build a company or generate income, generate wealth or something. Yeah, go ahead and make it. Go ahead and create it. Go do your thing. In the first century Mediterranean world, people believed everything existed in finite quantity, whether it was material, like money or livestock, or whether it was immaterial, like honor. So that means if someone gets something, that means somebody else lost something because it's a limited supply that goes around. And so if you don't understand that, there's a lot of things that lose their deeper meaning in the New Testament. And there's so much in the New Testament, like I said earlier, about Phoebe, Mary Magdalene, and the other Mary. Who she is escapes me. Those are things that are actually in the text that point towards egalitarian principles with men and women. But they're not drawn out of the text, or they are ignored, or they are deemed, problematic and incorrect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was fascinated by something this week. I was gifted a book, a historical book that was published in 1887 called What Can a Woman Do?
What a title. It is an incredible little work of art. Just the artistry in it, too.
And it's written by M.L. Rain, which, of course, is a woman. Woman authors back then either had to go under a pen name of a man or else they would use initials.
That's crazy.
M.L. Rain. There's a couple things in that book. I've only read a little bit of it, but I'm going to paraphrase one of the quotes in it. Imagine if our grandfathers could revisit the earth. What would astonish them quite as much as the rail cars and the electric lights is the position that woman has taken and is so nobly sustaining under all these difficulties of non-fitness and lack of education. It might not surprise them to find lady cashiers or lady bankers, but what would they say to women lecturing in public, preaching at the pulpit, women as school commissioners, women appointed by the governor to responsible positions, to women as practicing physicians, counseling the wisest of the opposite sex? If they could see these facts as they are, the results would not astonish them so much as the courage and perseverance which led them through difficulties that were almost insurmountable to get there. What I find interesting about this, that's a lot of words, is that the shock of these grandfathers might not necessarily be, oh, it's a gender of a woman, but might be more of how did that woman get from point A to point B? Because that woman, how she wasn't even allowed an education like across the board, like a fair, equitable education.
Yeah, they probably want to ask her all sorts of questions about how did you do this?
And I mean, back then, 1887, they're not opening bank accounts in their own name. They're not. There's a lot of
100 years out, right?
Right. Almost 100 years out, exactly. So I just thought that was interesting perspective, that they might be shocked of the societal hurdles, which would have had to been overcome.
Yeah.
It wouldn't compute.
You got this from your brother's flip house.
Yeah, my brother bought a house recently, and it was full of old books.
They all know like how to basically do anything like construction related.
Right.
They can do A to Z rehab a house by themselves if they wanted to, which I'm there myself, but they were all raised doing those things.
Right.
Educated within the family, generations of knowledge shared there. Whereas I didn't know how to do anything at the age of, I don't know, how old was I? 31, 32. And I had to teach myself everything through, listening to other people and asking questions to other people for help, YouTube, Google, all kinds of stuff. And your brother, one of your other brothers, is always astonished that I know how to do what I do because he's like, you had to learn everything. I don't know. And he just has no concept of that because he basically took a breath and had a hammer in his hand. That's kind of an idea being communicated here, that it's not that, oh, you guys can do the same thing. But what's astonishing is like, here's all the extra work you had to do to get there.
Right. Yeah. And then add on top of that your method of learning how to do that, which was YouTube, is like illegal. So not only how did you learn all that stuff, but like, how did you get access to that information?
Wow. That's interesting. Huh. Because that's an interesting feeling to think that me learning how to do the things I know how to do would have been illegal. Then I would have just been stuck where I was. And like people would be keeping beautiful opportunities from me on purpose. That is very interesting. I'm gonna have to sit with that for a little while. That is that's infuriating to think of that. Jeez. And like very disheartening and very much like learned helplessness type feeling. The indignation. Oh my, yeah. Because see, I've been in places where like, yeah, I don't have maybe the same opportunities I wish I would have, but no one's actively trying to keep them from me. And it's not illegal for me to try to figure out how to get there.
This book was written in 1887. But it wasn't until the 50s to 70s, 1850s to 70s, where public high schools for girls actually opened. There was co-educational colleges that started to admit women around the 1830s. There was one that popped up. There was a couple more that popped up after that. By 1880, nearly 50% of U.S. colleges and universities admitted women. And by 1900, about 58%. But many elite institutions like Ivy League schools, top private schools, remained male only or heavily restricted women's access.
So, okay, so from like the late 1800s until like early 1970s, women were considered equal enough with men to go to universities, but not to get a bank account. So you could be a female like doctor, attorney, something, and you can't get a bank account in your own name?
Well, it wasn't until like the early mid 1900s where women's enrollment grew in graduate and professional schools like law and medicine still remained largely male dominated.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't thinking about the difference between graduate and undergraduate.
So like they would go to school, but it would mainly be for like feminine fields like teaching or nursing. Actually,
okay.
Where things really changed was the pivotal federal law in 1972. Title IX, no person in the United States shall on the basis of sex be excluded from participation in or denied the benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal assistance.
Right, which is like
so
almost all of them.
It legally prohibited sex discrimination in federally funded schools. And so you see from the 1970s to the 1980s, women's enrollment surges. And by the 1980s, women become the majority of undergraduates. A trend that continues today. And then in 1973, there was a Women's Educational Equity Act that went through, which was additional legislation to fund programs promoting gender equity and support the Title IX implementation.
There's also other things in Title IX, I think.
Oh, I think it was a big federal package.
Yeah. Wow, yeah. I think it's just for women.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was a big package.
Yeah, I know that because they also did a bunch of stuff with special education in the 70s. And like, stuff for IEPs and 504s. Yeah, it was a civil rights law that bans sex-based discrimination in education programs receiving federal funds. It covers sexual harassment and assault, equal athletic opportunities, and pregnancy discrimination.
As far as Ivy League goes...
Oh, who was first?
1865, Cornell. In 1869, Yale admitted the first woman to the School of Fine Arts.
Okay, Yale.
In 1969 was the first female undergraduates admitted to Yale College. So they were allowed to go to the fine arts school.
Oh.
But no. Nothing else for like 100 years later.
What in the world? Like that's enough.
Right. That's enough.
That's enough.
50
years later, it's still enough. That's still enough.
Harvard had like a partner college called Radcliffe College,
Okay.
which was founded in 1879 for women's education. But Harvard's undergraduate college remained male only until 1977.
Until 1977?
Yep.
Whoa. 1977.
In 1969, Princeton admitted their first female undergraduates. In 1971, Brown did. Dartmouth, 1972. Then Columbia was the last Ivy League to become fully coeducational at the undergraduate level, 1983.
Oh my gosh. I don't know why it consistently surprises me just how late certain things occurred. Like 83, we were born 5 years later. But we grew up like women going to college, or it was just totally normal. It was like, yeah, of course, you're a person. You're going to college if you want to.
Right.
Whereas one generation before, like, I don't know if Gen X, but definitely the boomer generation, like, it was not the same norm.
So again, this woman writing in 1887 saying our grandparents coming back and seeing this, they would think, but how? How did you get the education?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to be in the school. The other thing they mentioned in this book that was interesting was she's informing women that they can expect a wage gap of 20 to 30% less than their male counterpart. She does kind of justify a little bit by saying that men have to provide for more people than women do, which is no longer the case.
Oh, yeah.
But she does then go on to say, but all evils will be made right. What struck me about it, though, is 20 to 30% less. The wage gap right now is like 83 or 84 cents on the dollar. That's how much time. That's how much we've made up. That's it since 1887.
It's like 4 to 14%.
That's it. And if you're older, it's 55 or 65 years old, that wage gap is 77 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
The younger you are, the narrower the wage gap. Like younger, like in your 20s, the wage gap is more like 90 something cents on the dollar. And then as you age, it gets less. 88% of high-performing women receive personality-based feedback at their evaluations compared to 12% of high-performing men.
What, like smile more? Be more friendly?
76% of references in this one study that they did was referring to women being too aggressive or people not liking the way that they communicated.
Gosh, we need to be saying that to a lot of guys. Like, I've had bosses who were guys, could have learned from that in a performance review. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
76% of high-performing women received negative feedback in their performance reviews compared to only 2% of high-performing men.
Whoa, can you say that all feedback? All negative feedback?
76% in this particular study that they did of high-performing women received negative feedback in their performance reviews compared to only 2% of high-performing men.
Jeez.
They went over 200 performance reviews in this particular study, so it was a small sample.
Yeah. So, that is good to know statistically.
Something else that's sad is women are more than 20% less likely than men to receive difficult feedback that helps improve their performance. Managers are more likely to hesitate when it comes to giving feedback to women due to the risk of sounding mean or hurtful.
Oh.
And for some reason, this is less of a concern when giving feedback to male employees.
But women still get more negative feedback anyway.
Yeah, they still do. But that the negative feedback that they receive, though, is more personality-based, not performance-based.
Right.
So they do receive more negative feedback, but it's personality-based. It's not... not, this is what you could actually do better.
We don't want to hurt their feelings. Let's just talk negatively about their personality.
Literally.
That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense.
Jamila Jamil said this on the Think Twice show. She's awesome. She's a feminist. She's an actress. She's an activist. She's awesome. She said, if women were naturally submissive, they would have submitted by now, instead of getting back up and fighting time and time again. If anything, patriarchy trains men to be submissive because men fall in line.
Whoa. She really got you with the 1-2 punch. That was really good. That one sentence says a lot. Does a lot of, those words do a lot of work.
It did make me look into like who's more obedient gender-wise, out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Men and women score pretty equally. Angel Lights 2021 on TikTok says, sometimes people use respect to mean treating someone like a person. And sometimes they use respect to mean treating someone like an authority. And sometimes people who are used to being treated like an authority say, if you won't respect me, I won't respect you. And what they actually mean is, if you don't treat me like an authority, I won't treat you like a person.
Dang. Whoa. I've seen that happen before.
I have too.
I've been the person who wanted just to be treated human, and you want to be treated like an authority.
Right. And we're not talking about the same things.
No, that's a really good distinction. Same word, but you're talking about two different things.
Right. I think the government often treat me like I have authority.
Yeah.
So I will then treat you like a person.
Yeah, but we just want to treat you like a person. We're both adults here. We have different roles, but we're both adults here.
And I elected you.
Yeah. So why are you going to want me to treat you like an authority? I mean, I feel like that, like when of places I've been employed from my superiors. You barely treat me like a person, but you expect me to treat you like an authority.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening. And if you're a new listener, thanks for being here. I think we got a couple of those recently. And don't forget about our library coming out. The free access library will be live now while you're listening to this. And then the premium research library will be available August 17th.
I have to say, it is like Katie's life's work from the past 2 years, culminating into this giant research archive that is a wonderful resource. And I think if you are wanting to go have a conversation somewhere, maybe going to a doctor's appointment, if it's medical, there's a lot of data there that's at your fingertips if you need it for some reason to go prepared into something.
And that's part of why I created that library, but also why I created the free library too, because we're not going to paywall our sources. So the sources will always be free. But if you want those expanded tables so that you don't have to go directly to the link and you can just get all the stats in one snapshot and all the major claims in one snapshot and any disclaimers about the article, there are a lot of peer-reviewed studies on there. If you just wanted to look at those, you could just look at those, but it's a big resource.
I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity, or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.